So we will go ahead and get started. We're hoping to keep this meeting to 7 o'clock like we did last week. There will be time for question and answers. Welcome everybody. Again, thank you for taking another evening to be with us, to learn the facts, to have a discussion with us about what's going on in the Salida School District. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Leslie Berkeley. I'm president of the Salida School Board. There are other board members here, Albert Lionel, Dan Short, Rusty Gramzella are here with us tonight. We have our superintendent, Darrell Webb, with us. Our administrative team, Rose Lay, who's middle school principal. She's sitting in the back. I'm not sure why she's not coming out, but we'll see if she comes up. Dan Estelle, principal of elementary school, Tammy Thompson, who is the principal of the Salida High School. We've got Brett Hayden here in the blue. He's with the Boys and Girls Club, so he can give us an update on Boys and Girls Club. Jim Coscarella, who's director of our activities. Rob Gilchrist, math teacher here at the high school, and he's also head of our calendar committee. Penny Kitson and Carrie Brantley are also members of the calendar committee. There might be others, and I'm sorry if I don't mention all of you. We also have budget committee representatives, district accountability representatives here tonight, negotiations representatives. I'd like to give a very special thank you to Susan Matthews with our teachers organization. Susan has been helping us put out surveys and has pretty much, I think, single-handedly read the results of those surveys, hundreds of surveys, and it's taken a lot of work, and so I would like to acknowledge her efforts because it was very helpful for all of us, and we'll be looking at those surveys tonight. Some of you have already attended these meetings, and we appreciate you coming back and getting updates. For some of you, this information is new, so we will take a few minutes at the very beginning of this meeting to review some of the things we've talked about in past meetings, partly to refresh our memories, partly to get everybody on the same page for people who have not been here to these other meetings. As always, I encourage people to listen to each other because we don't all agree. And as I've said in many a board meeting, it's okay that we don't agree. It's the way that we choose to disagree that will make us successful. So listen to each other, gather the facts, say your points respectfully, knowing that we're all here for the same reason. We want what's best for our children. So with that, and jumping back a little bit, I gave Susan a special thank you. I want to thank all of those committees and individuals that I just mentioned because everybody has been working very hard behind the scenes, looking at data, making phone calls, doing research, putting numbers together this way and that way to try and come up with the best decisions for our community. So thank you to all. So how did this all start? 3 to 4 weeks ago, we found out, as did all Colorado school districts, that we were about to receive an 11% cut for the 2011-2012 budget. An 11% cut. And that's on top of the 6% cut that all districts received last year to our budgets. And let me just emphasize again, all districts are going through the same thing that Salida School District is going through. So we had anticipated that we would have some budget cuts for next year. We were figuring between 6 to 8%, possibly 10%, and when we found out it was 11%, it was quite a surprise. So other districts, as I said, are having the same conversations that we're having. They're considering salary freezes, they're considering salary reductions, benefit reductions, staff reductions, program cuts, and changes in schedules, including 4-day weeks. So we're having similar conversations as other districts across the state. For some of you already know this. On Friday, the Joint Budget Committee for the state of Colorado met, and they reviewed some revenue forecasts. And they were told in that meeting that it looks like we will have $161 million put back in the budget for next year. Now, I want to point out that's based on a revenue forecast. So it's like predicting the weather. It's exciting to know that there might be more money coming to the school districts, but we don't know really how much that's going to be, and we're probably not going to find out for several weeks. So we need to keep that in mind, but we need to keep these conversations going. So the good news is that we still have a discussion to go about how much money there is or will be. There are still many discussions to come, and these things won't be finalized for a few weeks. We are required to give some employees notice of staffing changes by April 1st. which brings some urgency to our decision making. So as you can imagine, people want as much time as possible to begin looking for work if we can no longer employ them. So we've received some comments about why can't we wait until we get more information from the state, and the reality is we simply can't. We don't have, our contracts say something different, so we need to make decisions. The decisions will not be easy, nor will they be clear-cut, and yet it is the time that we have to make them. We're not only making decisions for this year, but we're keeping in mind what the decisions will be on the horizon. What will 2012 look like? What will 2013 look like? 2018? So we're still doing a bit of planning, realizing that things are changing drastically and quickly. As I mentioned in the meeting a couple of weeks ago, it is a different world in education from when we all went to school. It requires a different education, a strong foundation in the basics, laced with expectations and new opportunities. If you think about it, basically we just have to look at education in a different way, looking at what the basics are, but then how we build on that or share that with children differently. So consider technology for one, and the rapid pace that it has changed. There's a greater global awareness, a greater global competition, a greater global opportunities, and we have to think of all of those things as we're teaching our children. There's more emphasis on collaboration, educational alternatives, and reform. There's a shift on 21st century skills that we didn't think about 6 and 7 years ago. And we understand that every child learns differently. We don't just sit up desks in a classroom row by row and teach from a book the way that we all learned maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's much, much different. And we have to consider those differences, and we have to consider the differences that are on the way. So what is at the core of this school board's direction, what we try and strive for? First of all, what is the best for education, preschool through 12th grade and beyond? Because we realize it doesn't just end for children when they graduate. They have a career before them, or they have more education to go. So we need to prepare them for that. So what is the best for education, preschool through 12th grade and beyond? What is the best for children? That's the second priority. What is the best for their future? Not what we think the future should be, but what is best for their future? And we try and think of those things as a school board whenever we're making decisions. Why is it important to talk about these things and have these goals before us? Because it creates common understanding and direction, because we know where we're going and what we're trying to achieve, and because it keeps us on track during the good times and the bad times. And I think as I'm on the board for Colorado Association of School Boards, and there are 22 of us on a board, and we meet in Denver quarterly. And I just went to that meeting this past weekend, and it's fascinating to hear school districts across Colorado, smaller than us, larger than us, having the exact same conversations that we're having. And it's amazing to me to hear those conversations and realize that as a community, as a district, we've been having conversations about priorities for several years now, and that has helped us create our goals, create our direction, so that when decisions are difficult, we stay on task and we know where we're going. And we're weathering this really better than some districts in Colorado. Some districts are really scrambling, and even though the decisions don't necessarily feel good, and even though we don't like our choices, I can tell you this light is faring pretty well in what's going on around us. This is Go ahead, clap for yourselves, because this is because of the community and because of the staff and because of the discussions that we're able to have together. So good job, Salida, and we will continue working on these things. This is a continual process, and we'll have more discussions about this budget, and we'll have more discussions afterwards. We've started talking a little bit about as a board about what the discussions might look like in the future, and about what we want education to look like in Salida and how are we going to get there, realizing that the state keeps cutting our funding, and soon the federal government is probably going to keep cutting our funding as well. So what are we going to do about that? We're not just going to, Salida has never just sat back and said, okay, we'll go ahead and go along. I think we've been very good about saying, no, what is it that we want with what we have, with the resources that we have, and we'll continue having those conversations. So in terms of the board and our philosophy,